Well, hey there, everybody. Just running the latest brain dance that I got from the local Ripper Doc over on Jig Jig Street. So in today's episode, we're going to be coming to you all the way from beautiful Night City, because lately I've been really into the video game Cyberpunk 2077 on the PS5. Now, I did play the PS4 version when it first came out, but due to all the glitches and bugs with the game, I really couldn't get into it. But eventually they did release the PS5 version, and a lot of those issues had been resolved. Well, most of them, not all of them. However, despite the occasional weirdness, I have been thoroughly enjoying my time as a paid merc, whether it's taking down a gang of scavs, or stealing some sweet Militech gear, or even trying to get the corrupted shard of Johnny Silverhand out of my cerebral implant before it kills me. I have been having an absolute blast, and it reinvigorated my love for the cyberpunk genre. In fact, I even went out and got myself a copy of Neuromancer, written by famed author and cyberpunk guru William Gibson, a book that not only had a very strong influence on the cyberpunk video game, as well as the cyberpunk genre in itself, but also has a very strong connection to the topic of today's episode. You see, William Gibson wrote another story, a short story in fact, one that would earn high praise and be eventually adapted into a feature-length film with the screenplay written by William Gibson himself, no less. And that film is the 1995 cyberpunk action thriller Johnny Mnemonic.
I want the club sandwich. I want the cold Mexican beer. I want a $10,000 a night hooker. I want room service!
Johnny Mnemonic is the story of a young data courier who's carrying some very classified information inside a cerebral implant, while some very nefarious people are chasing after him in an attempt to get a hold of that info. The movie was directed by Robert Longo, and it stars a man who's no stranger to the cyberpunk genre, old Johnny Silverhand himself, Keanu Reeves. And some other notable faces show up now and then throughout the film, such as Dina Meyer, Ice-T, Dolph Lundgren, and Henry Rollins. Now, most critics just shrug this movie off as another mediocre sci-fi action flick that is both narratively misguided and woefully miscast. Well, I say nuts to that. Because in actuality, much like most films in Hollywood, the final result of Johnny Mnemonic is actually quite different from what both the director and the screenwriter had originally envisioned, mostly due to a limited budget, but also because of the ever-brilliant producers of the film. Well, they decided to completely change the movie and make it more of an action vehicle in an attempt to cash in on Keanu Reeves' previous success with the movie Speed. And so instead of getting a much more thought-provoking and character-driven film, what we get is a soulless husk of a movie with subpar action scenes and CGI effects that make the Lawnmower Man look like Avatar. But that's not to say that this movie doesn't have its moments. I mean, if you're a fan of the cyberpunk genre, there's plenty of things in Johnny Mnemonic that's sure to tickle your fancy. So before we begin, make sure you hit that like, hit the subscribe, and well, let's get into it. The film begins with the main character Johnny, who's just Netflix and chilling with his lady friend.
NAS.
And then Johnny calls up his old buddy Ralphie, because Johnny's got an implant in his brain that he wants removed because it's kind of messing up his head. But then Ralphie tells Johnny that an operation like that is going to be expensive as shit, unless of course he wants to take his chances with some discount doc in Mexico. But then Ralphie tells Johnny that if Johnny does a little job for him, maybe he can make enough scratch to get that operation after all.
One more run, Johnny, and then you could cover it, provided it's a rich one.
So what have you got?
Pickup is in central Beijing tomorrow night, 10 o'clock. This is a big one.
And so Johnny takes the job and he soon finds himself in Beijing. And right in the middle of the beautiful protest season. And before he meets with the client, Johnny adds a few more gigs of RAM to his brain implant, which is already maxed out as it is, and it's kind of dangerous. But Johnny needs that scratch, so he decides to risk it. And then he's welcomed by these kindly folks.
Double cheese anchovies?
and they get some really important information that they need sent to Newark, and for some reason they couldn't just email that shit.
Here's your ticket. First class.
And at first Johnny's a little hesitant, partially because the information he's transporting exceeds the space in his implant and it could possibly kill him, but mostly it's because he has to go to New Jersey.
Reloading or not?
But he finally agrees and they start the download. And just as soon as they finish the download, some boys from the Yakuza show up, and they shoot the shit out of everything trying to find that information. But luckily, Johnny manages to escape. And he finds his way to beautiful Newark. And while he's getting scanned at the airport, the AI tells Johnny he better go see a doctor real quick, because the implant in his brain is going to kill him in like a day or two.
Warning, detected synaptic seepage. Neural failure within 24 hours. Seek medical attention immediately.
Thank you.
Welcome to Newark.
And then while he's on his way to deliver the data, Johnny gets a hold of his buddy Ralphie.
I got the goods, Ralphie. Now I just want to get them out of my head. Did they get the code out?
And right off the bat, he's starting to feel that shit's not too kosher.
What's going on, Ralphie? This feels like a blown deal, man.
And he's soon proven right when he arrives at the meet and he almost gets his head sawed off.
Doctor, we'll see you now.
But luckily, Johnny manages to escape yet again. With a little help from Ice-T. And then Johnny realizes that Ralphie sold him out to the Yakuza. So he goes and pays Ralphie a little visit.
Charlie! They were waiting for me, Ralphie. Two big, nasty men.
But Ralphie quickly turns the tables on Johnny.
Not on the head!
Ralphie, you lying sack of shit.
Please, let's work this out like gentlemen.
And so it's up to an unemployed bodyguard named Jane to bust in and save the day. For a price, that is.
Jane, what say we pay you for a night's work and you just walk away?
I'll pay you 20 grand.
You ain't 50.
Deal.
So he hires her as his bodyguard. And as the two make a hasty getaway,
You could have fucking killed me!
this Yakuza dude takes care of pesky old Ralphie. Ooh, that's kinda smart. You know, this is just one of many, many horrible and gruesome deaths suffered by prolific German actor Udo Kier. Let's take a look.
Did I tell you the one about the left?
And with the Yakuza dude hot on their heels, Johnny and Jane get yet another assist from Ice-T and his gang known as the Low-Techs.
Back door.
Thanks, J-Bone.
We'll find you again! Count on it!
Down!
And then the two make their way through an abandoned subway tunnel where Johnny has an episode.
Hey! What's wrong? Come here, sit down, sit down.
And then Johnny tells Jane about the implant in his head that keeps him from remembering certain things in his life, such as
My childhood.
Your childhood. All of it. You can't remember a thing.
And then the two stumble into some random office where Johnny surfs the web.
Password, enter.
And then he manages to track down Discount Max Headroom, and he tells Johnny exactly why the Yakuza's been on his ass.
You got a head full of pharmacon data, and they've hired the Yakuza to get it out.
And then Johnny gets a warning from some digital guardian angel.
Hurry, Johnny. They're coming.
And so Johnny and Jane quickly take off just as the Yakuza arrive. Growing annoyed at his lackey's constant failures, the Yakuza boss reaches out to a man known only as the Preacher, who hires him to track down Johnny and Jane.
You need someone brought to Jesus?
Later on, Johnny and Jane are talking, and Jane has an episode of her own.
Jesus, you're sick. You're strung out or what? Hey! Hey, can you hear me?
And so Johnny quickly takes her to the local Ripper dock so he can get her patched up.
10 AS, right?
Yeah, the black shake. Like half the people on the planet.
Meanwhile, the Preacher starts asking around town looking for Jane.
Who's the girl?
Doesn't wanna be. She's always hanging around here.
Back at Doc Rollins' place, Jane comes to, and the trio hit the road. Then the Preacher shows up from out of nowhere, but Doc Rollins doesn't really have time for that shit. And then they arrive at the hospital. Where Doc Rollins takes a look at Johnny's implant.
But I can get it out.
How?
The general anesthetic, a cranial drill, and a pair of forceps. You'll probably lose some fine motor skills. You might not be able to remember anything for more than 3 minutes at a time.
Fuck that.
And then he tells Johnny that the information stored on his implant is actually the cure to a disease that's killing Jane.
You mean like real cure?
They could have you straightened out in 3 weeks, Janie. You and everybody else.
However, safely retrieving the information could possibly kill Johnny. So now Johnny's either faced with saving his own life or sacrificing himself to save the lives of others. But luckily, Johnny doesn't really have time to ponder that decision, because before long the Preacher shows up and starts raising hell.
Behold your savior!
And old Doc Rollins, he sacrifices himself in order to let Johnny and Jane escape.
Jane, get up the dome, it's your only chance! Go!
And after some more shenanigans, Johnny takes a minute to vent his frustrations.
I'm responsible for the entire fucking world. And everybody and his mother is trying to kill me if my head doesn't blow up first. I've had it with them. I've had it with you. I've had it with all this. I want room service!
And Ice-T then shows up just as Johnny's having another episode.
J-Bone, help me. Come on.
And so he takes Johnny to his hideout, and he introduces him to their special friend named Jones.
Jones.
What in the shit?
It's a fish.
Anyway, so Ice-T tells him that Jones is the best way to get the data out of Johnny's head without killing him. But Johnny's a little apprehensive about putting his life in the hands of flippers of a cyber dolphin.
Wait a minute. Have you done this before? As the fish?
But again, Johnny really doesn't have a choice in the matter, so Ice-T hooks Johnny up and the dolphin does his thing. Meanwhile, the Yakuza arrive and they start taking out Ice-T's posse. And as As the battle ensues, Johnny manages to take out the Yakuza boss. But just when you thought the day was saved, the preacher shows up and he starts beating the shit out of Johnny.
He's made you the vessel of his mercy, as I am the vessel of his wrath.
But luckily, with a little help from Jones the Dolphin, Jane steps in and she saves the day. And with the preacher dead and the Yakuza taken care of, Johnny loads back in to retrieve the Pharmacom data.
Unauthorized interface attempt.
Send it out!
And after a very long and terrible CGI battle, Johnny manages to get the data from his implant, thus releasing the cure to the disease to the public, as well as getting his old childhood memories back.
Happy birthday, Johnny. Thank you, Mommy.
Then he and Jane and Ice-T live happily ever after. Or at least as happy as you can get in Newark, New Jersey. And that was Johnny Mnemonic. Not a terrible movie per se, just rather misunderstood. And I think it's a lost opportunity to give us something rather unique and very special. And it makes me wonder what might have been if the dumb shit producers had just kept their grubby, sleazy hands out of it. Now, from what I'm led to believe, there's actually a black and white version of the film that's actually a lot closer to what the director and the screenwriter had originally envisioned, and at some point in time I'm really excited to check that out. But for now, I'm just going to go back to my brain dance. So until next time, folks, this is me to you, wishing you all the best, and reminding you to always keep it real. Bye-bye.